Namaskar and welcome back to Media Scan, your weekend dose of headlines, controversies and perspectives. More than 2 million without running water, millions living in shanties with no toilets, and while toileting, an euphemism for open defecation becoming a huge public menace. No, these are not reports from what we call the underdeveloped world. These are reports from the US, from London, from one of the biggest cities of Europe and some of the well-known places of the world. While India continues to make its mark in ensuring access to toilets to all its citizens, cities in the Western world are faced with this newest challenge of open defecation. What are the reasons and what can be done to fight this new challenge is what we are going to discuss on Media Scan this evening. Joining me, Vinod Agrawal, retired civil servant who has been associated with multiple sanitation and public facility projects during his career. Great to have you on the show, sir. Welcome, Mr. Agrawal.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me for this program.
And with me, veteran journalist, well known to speak his mind without mincing words, currently senior advisor in the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, Kanchan Gupta. Great to have you, sir. Namaskar.
Namaste and thank you for having me.
And may I start with you, Mr. Gupta, first? You know, I was reading this report from London, but there are also parallel reports. The latest one which came in March from the UN, which says 1 in every 4 persons in the world has this problem of not having access to running water and toilets and similar facilities. Why then try to speak about the West only when this is clearly a global challenge? And this, sir, is in reference to your recent tweet where you called out the public menace in London.
Well, Smita, the problem of proper sanitation, the problem of potable water, the problem of waste disposal, especially human waste disposal, is not something which is endemic only to the developing world. It is very much there in the developed world.
Yes.
And I presume the story you are referring to is the piece in the Guardian where they talk about quote unquote wild toileting. It has become a problem in Britain, and it has become a problem in Europe, much of Europe, and it has definitely become a huge problem in America. The reasons are different for Europe and as compared to the reasons in America, but the commonality is that there is increasing open defecation in both places, and this is something which was not unique to them. But now it is becoming increasingly unique because the developed world has taken on the problem of open defecation in a big way, especially India. We know how many toilets have been built and how this very unhygienic practice has been curbed. But when I said the reasons are different, in America, you have increasing poverty. You have more and more people being rendered homeless. If you go to a place like San Francisco, if you go to Chicago, you go to Portland, and you'll find large numbers of people living on the pavements. So this is something which is sort of, nobody ever expected that people
Yes.
would be rendered such pitiable condition in the richest country in the world. But
so I'll come back to the various reasons you are referring to. Certainly the reasons are not the same for the various places, even if the problems may be similar. May I bring in Vinod Agrawal here quickly? Mr. Agarwal, coming to you, I see a kind of a reverse pattern here. I mean, countries who have been faced with the challenge of sanitation, there are countries from Africa, there are countries from Asia, but those countries are gradually, with the help of various aid programs and their own governments, trying to improve their situation, and the data is encouraging in most cases, if not all. Particularly in the context of cities in the UK or the US or some of the best cities of Europe, it seems like something like a reverse evolution, isn't it? I mean, places which had no challenge about access to toilets are today becoming smelly cities, and whoever goes there comes back with all these complaints about feeling like being in the midst of a public toilet when you are walking along the cities.
Yes, Smita, what you are saying is quite correct in a way. I would refer to a WHO UNICEF report on joint monitoring program for water supply, sanitation, and hygiene of 2018. It says that out of population of about 746 million in Europe, in 51 countries, 11 countries are facing with problem of lack of water facility. 31 million people in Europe do not have access to basic sanitation. 48 million do not have access to piped water supply, and 3 lakh people still do the practice of open defecation. That is the status. The 11 countries which are named in this include France, Spain, Ukraine, Portugal, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Hungary, Moldova, and you can say 3, 4 more. I don't want to really name each and every one. So point here is that even a country which is a Security Council member, permanent member of Security Council like France or even Spain, very big countries, they in Spain the 95% people have the facility of sanitation. 5% people still lack sanitation facilities. Ukraine
No, so
is a
the point
laggard
being,
in
Mr. Agrawal, the point being that even these countries who find it so easy to point fingers at, the so-called developing world are actually struggling with the issue themselves, right? Is that your point?
Actually, they have hidden their figures. They always point out towards the developing countries or country like India. That country belong to sadhus, uh, snakes, and others. That way, they have always described us. Which, with the last 10 years of program which our Prime Minister has started, I think that has really brought a lot of change in the India. Secondly, I feel that because of the capital market system in Europe, all the toilets are in the urban area are paid. Like somewhere you have to pay half a dollar, somewhere you have half euro, and something like that. So, and many people now must be finding it difficult. Like in India, the programs where the mass toilets have been made for by certain Sulabh and other organizations in the urban area, which are very cheap or even free most of the time. So that type of facility, I think, need to come up in Europe also. We have visited Europe on official visits or the personal visits in America and Europe. The problem is that in the urban area, the public facilities are very far away, and many times it's very difficult for older people to even uh, because of the prostatic problem. I'm a doctor also besides an IAS, so I know the prostate at the age of 55 to 60, the prostate problem comes. It's very difficult for a person to hold urine for a long time.
Right.
So
So,
that type of, I think now these countries also need to develop public toilets free of cost for people. That is the point I wanted to make. Yeah, you
point
can.
taken, sir. Kanchan Gupta, two things that have been just now mentioned by Mr. Agarwal, and I too was reading the analysis of various experts, and it comes out that the system of making payments, which was greatly opposed by a section of the population, and secondly, the fact that public toilets, a call was taken to shut them down during COVID, and somehow for some reason those toilets never reopened. So these are being cited as the two principal reasons behind this new challenge that has come up in the cities in the Western world. Coupled with that is the huge influx of refugees from various parts of the world, most particularly West Asia, and apparently their civic administration is totally sort of unable to deal with this current influx, particularly people living in the shanties who have not been given any permanent structures or toilets. How much of these do you think are the true reasons, or is there something more to it?
So, as I was telling you, that the reasons are different from country to country, from continent to continent. When you talk of Europe and the refugee influx, so what has happened is that a lot of these refugees, they bring with them certain cultural practices, certain social practices which are not in tune with uh, the Western practices. And toilet use is one of them. Uh, but we are not really talking about refugees over here. We are talking of some deep-seated problems which these countries have with, as I said, with the with water, with toilets, with waste disposal. If you look at some of the European countries, their the concept of a hygiene with toilets is very low. I mean, they still, for instance, I mean, they still use toilet paper, whereas a much more hygienic practice, a much more uh,
Scientific,
scientific and much more a better waste disposal is to use water.
yes.
And and we have been doing that, and we have now and a lot of Asian countries are doing that now, and Europe and America should start emulating that practice. But that said, the problem again in America is with homelessness, which is a reflection of the real state of their economy, the real state of their society, and the real state of the not so affluent states of that country. So, if you look at, for instance, if you look at San Francisco, you will have you find people defecating on the pavements. You find children defecating on pavements. If you if you if you look at if you look at what's happening in, say, a city like Portland, recently there was a horrific video on social media of a woman publicly urinating in Portland, and this was outside a restaurant. So these kind of things are now happening, and they have a genuine problem. In Britain, they have a problem which is multifaceted. You have hooligans who indulge in it. You have homeless people who indulge in it. You have the problem of infrequent or the lack of toilets on the high street and the side streets. So all these combine to create a situation, and they have also faced a population increase. So these problems add up. Now, the larger point is that the White West tends to uh, uh, stand in the pulpit and preach to others on what they should be doing and what they need to know. So there is the white man preaching to the brown man, and that, I think, is now increasingly sort of being resented to. So
Precisely. And I'll
the
come back to you, Kanchan Gupta, on perhaps there are things that the white man needs to sort of come down from the high horse and learn from the so-called world that they were known to look down upon until recently. But before that, very quickly, Mr. Agarwal, I have some data here with me, but before that, you know, bizarre incidents, some of them have just been mentioned by Mr. Gupta. These bizarre incidents of people relieving themselves in letterboxes, on walls, outside pubs, openly defecating in places where even toilets are available for that matter. Clearly, it's not just a question of access, there is something going seriously wrong in the society there, whereas in India, before 2014, if I may say, that the access to toilet, the Shauchalaya coverage, which was less than 40%, is today almost reaching a saturation point, and more than 38,000 of our villages, or even a bigger number, is now ODF, open defecation free. Isn't it time for the West to take a few lessons from us?
Yeah,
Your point.
definitely. We are working in a world where United Nations is looking at India for so many things. Naturally, like in this year where G20 uh, summit is taking place, it would be very important for these countries to see how a city like Indore or many other cities have been declared ODF, uh, open defecation free. Many
And
parts of this
villages.
country have become free. So they need to look at all these things which are happening at low cost in India and how they can emulate it in the Western world, especially with a lot of refugees coming to southern part of America from the Mexican border and other places, and a lot of refugees from West Asia going to Europe. I think the number of homeless have increased in these places. They need to see the program which this country, India, is running for the homeless for the last 70 years, and how the public toilets are required in large number. And secondly, not only, as you mentioned very clearly, that it's not only lack of access to the toilets, it's the basic practices which Mr. Gupta also pointed out. Like in many countries, the practices are totally different. So, like if they make toilets only suitable for the Europeans, and not looking into the cultural practices of Asia and other parts of the country. So they need to make the toilets which are friendly to the people who are coming from various places. That also is a the multicultural the facilities which are being made should be looked after by the in a way that the people coming from other countries are also able to use it equally well. That is also required. And thirdly, it's always the social sector, how they teach people who are coming from outside, even if they are illegal or whatever way, how they have to behave. That certain practices have to be really taught to the people where when they are coming
So
to other
you are saying,
countries.
if I gather correctly, Mr. Agarwal, you are saying that apart from the civic administration taking cognizance of lack of facilities, there has to be a behavioral sort of improvement in the
Yeah,
situation to
definitely.
make, to sensitize
Actually, people
people.
when they're coming from West Asia, they have not seen toilets. Like Lebanon and Syria, where civil war is going for such a long time. Naturally, people must be going here and there. The children might not even have seen the toilets. So, if such people are reaching the European cities or wherever, they need to be taught also. I think the social
Right.
system.
Point taken.
Uh,
Allow me
System of
to bring
that
in
country has
Kanchan
to
Gupta
take
back
this
into
thing.
the discussion, Mr. Agarwal. Just a second, sir. Kanchan Gupta, one thing that comes to mind, it's easy for us to look at what's happening in the West and try to tell them certain lessons. But the fact remains that until recently, India was also this country where our women, our girls, our children did not have access to toilets. It has been a question of not only a visionary leadership, but a resolve of not only bringing the facility to the doorsteps, but ensuring no pilferage is done. The money is not eaten up among people before it reaches the true beneficiary. India's Shauchalaya program, the Swachhata campaign, today is a beacon of hope for all countries, developed or otherwise, who want to ensure perfect sanitation and public facilities to their citizens. Yes or no?
Well, let me answer this question in three parts. One, uh, you see, there is no country in the world which is perfect. And if the White West thinks that they are perfect, they are welcome to that thinking. But that is not a fact. So when you talk of India had open defecation, yes, India had open defecation. The reasons for these again are multiple. It was some sort of a traditional cultural practice that continued over decades. Uh, then there was, of course, poverty. There was a very low sense of received wisdom on hygiene, public health issues, etc. And yes, things have changed since 2014 after Prime Minister Narendra Modi came in. Uh, and he made Swachhata a very important flagship program for his government. Now, you have to remember Swachh Bharat mission was not only about building toilets. I mean, we had a very strange situation where India had more mobile phones than toilets.
Yes.
Now, it was about creating some sort of a sense that this is not a vanity. A toilet is not a vanity, it is an essential. Because it was considered a vanity till Swachhata mission began. So it was turned around that no, this is not a vanity, it is an essential part of your life. Every individual household should have its own toilet, that these toilets should be well maintained. And linked to that was water. So that is happening separately. And linked to that was the keeping the environments clean. That is also happening. The panchayats, the municipalities, the corporations, they have all been drawn into this. You have excellent success stories in some places, you have middling success stories in some places, and you have bad stories in some places. Now, that will always be the case. But the point which I was making, that when when the Western media, because this show of yours is essentially about media, the when the Western media reports on, say, something like uh, toilets and ODF, etc., in India, the Swachhata mission, they will make it a point to go to a village in some place and find that it has 10 missing toilets. Or they will go to a place where, for, again, for a variety of reasons, like whether it could be a Maoist, Maoist violence hit area, and they will find a village which has not been impacted by Swachhata mission. Uh, so, and then that will be the story. That see, these brown chaps, they go to the fields and they defecate in the open, while the Prime Minister claims that India has become ODF. Uh, so, but you see, this little game of theirs stands exposed. What the Guardian story has done, it has exposed the duplicity of both Western governments and the Western media. That
Right. And
this
if I'm not wrong, the stories you were referring to about Indians having more mobiles than toilets, there were any number of headlines in the Western media columns, I remember, highlighting that one single report. I wonder if similar reports have been filed on the
but
conditions in their
Smita,
own
that is
cities. But
the,
Mr. Gupta,
there
very
was
quickly
nothing
in one line,
no,
I
there
would
was
like to
nothing wrong
know.
with that report. There was
Yes.
nothing wrong with that report. It is a fact that we had more mobiles than toilets. It's just that America has more cars than toilets. It's just like Europe has
Yes.
uh, possibly more casinos than toilets. So
Right.
if this kind of a comparison is done, then you can always find a truism somewhere. Now, that is precisely the point which I'm making, that there is a general sense of hypocrisy over here. Western
Yes.
governments pretend that they are the most evolved species, or their countries and their peoples are the most evolved species, and therefore others should learn from them. Western media makes out a case that the brown and black parts of the world must learn from the white parts of the world, on how to civilize themselves, etc.
Got it, sir. Just quickly,
But the
one line
fact
from
is
Mr. Gupta,
that
because
it's
Mr. Agarwal,
changing.
because I'm running short of time here. Mr. Agarwal, very quickly, like Kanchan Gupta said, you know, the Western media correspondents, they always manage to find that one single village where the ODF program perhaps may not be going as well as desired. Do you think, considering the situation in their own respective countries, it is time they shed their hypocrisy, adopt a sort of an open-minded attitude, and try to, you know, learn from some of the success stories that are coming out of India now?
Definitely, what you say is 100% correct, Ms. Swati. Basically, what I will say, any program is successful if it is more than 95 or 98% successful. 1 or 2% cases would always be there where the things lack certain things, facilities are not available. So, or not in proper shape, but that should never be counted as lack of success of a program. This is
Correct.
not like a polio control program where you have to have 0.001% only. Even that is remaining, then that means that polio is still there. It is program, if it is more than 97, 98% successful, it should be considered successful program. That is the
Fine,
point I
fine.
would like.
Thank you very much, Mr. Agarwal, for joining us on this very sensitive issue, which I do not think any media has been trying to raise. And also grateful to Kanchan Gupta to have found the time to join our discussion. Viewers, as both our guests have pointed out, sometimes it helps the white man to come out of his hypocrisy, his white man's burden as it is called, and try to learn from what is happening in the non-white world. In the case of sanitation, toilets, open defecation, this precisely seems to be the situation. While our stupendous success in the Swachhata program is there for the whole world to see, situation is worsening in the western cities, and lessons from India's Swachhata program could bring a lot of sense to where it is required. But on that note, it's a wrap up on Media Scan for this evening. See you next weekend. Namaskar.